Ladies and gentlemen, this is your final boarding call for the good ship SS Tomorrow.
Today on The Friendly Futurist, we say hello to some old friends. And welcome back. Here on the good ship SS Tomorrow, I had to remind myself of a certain date. That was the 7th of January, 2021. The date that the good ship SS Tomorrow first embarked on this crazy journey into the near future. That's got me thinking. You see, at the end of each episode, I do ask my guests to envision the world we're going to live in, say, 5 to 10 years from now. And guess what? On the 7th of January 2026, that is 5 years from now. So it's got to be my mission from now, at the end of 2025 and well into 2026, as well as meeting new friends along the way, is to catch up as to the many old guests that we had over the past 5 years as possible and ask them one simple question. Are your predictions coming true? Now, the first cab off the rank is Lee Schneider. You might remember him from season 9 with episodes 4 and 5. We had a big discussion about AI taking their jobs and is it okay to suffer from climate change anxiety? But Lee actually came to me and reported back to me, I don't know what he's got up sleeve, because, if you might remember, he's a fellow futurist and he's a science fiction writer. He might have some sort of telekinesis, mind-reading technology. I don't know. But what I do know is he came back and we had a very good, healthy discussion about the ubiquitous use of AI in today's society and the rise of Neo-Luddites. Now, if you know what Luddite is, or Ludditism is, it was back in the original Industrial Revolution in the Midlands of England. Some activists were throwing wooden clogs into potentially the mills and the machines to clog them up and break them down because they felt threatened by the use of machinery. Fast forward to the 21st century, and we've seen the rise of this. This time, it's probably aimed at AI. People do feel threatened to stick their livelihoods with AI. But also, there's a sort of a societal need. We need to put sort of handbrake on. Not to say put it back in the bottle, but if you think about it from a consumer's point of view, it's been thrusted upon us. It's everywhere. And a lot of it, we didn't actually ask for it. A lot of it is just a demand that was created artificially, no pun intended, to make sense that we might need this to make our lives easier. But where's the save for the people? Where's the bottom up? It's just like a very top-down, you'll use it because it'll make your life better sort of approach where we don't actually need it to a point. I know it's very controversial, but we won't really think about it. And also the untold damage that data centers can do to the environment as well. Anyhow, Lee Schneider is coming back on board the good ship SS Tomorrow right after the break. And welcome back. And this is the first, I hope of many where I'm going to follow up on my previous guests. I always like to ask the question whether they envision the world in 5 to 10 years' time. And guess what? One of them came back. It's Lee Schneider. He's a fellow futurist from Future X. And if you want to see Lee's previous episodes, go back to season 9, episodes 4 and 5, back in 2023. We chat about climate change anxiety and how long before we were working for our robot overlords. And I think a lot of things has changed since in the last 2 years. This feels like 20 years ago almost. But Lee, welcome.
Thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
And welcome back. And yeah, let's just check out by things. How are things progressing since we last spoke, and how are your predictions going along?
Well, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, my predictions have been pretty good. I've guessed at a lot of things. You know, when you're writing a book, you're literally making things up. But a large number of the things that I thought were just distant possibilities, like AI writing a novel or using AI instead of a work associate, you'd rely on the AI. A lot of these things, that's just the beginning, really, have become true faster than I can keep up with writing about them. So it's been, I would say, strange, rather strange. You know, it's like, how crazy, what's the next crazy idea I can come up with? And then it turns out to be true.
Yeah, well, let's just go straight into it. I think what really caught my eye when you came back to it, or pitched back to me, is the notion of, Neo-Luddism, potentially a blowback against this ubiquitous amount of AI that seems to be everywhere these days. What's your thoughts? What's your takes on that?
Well, I'm finding, by the way, I have a piece of paper where I've written my notes because I'm practicing to be a Neo-Luddite. So usually I use an iPad, but I thought I'd go with paper this time. Well, my main source for this is this book, Blood in the Machine, an excellent book by Brian Merchant. And he talks about the original Luddites, which were in the UK, in Great Britain, rebelling against, they were textile artisans, and they were rebelling against the machines that could replace them. There was a character named Ned Ludd, who usually depicted with a hammer in his hand, and he was a machine breaker. Now, Ned Ludd was probably a fictional character, but the rage against the machines was very real. So that's where the original Luddites were defeated brutally. They were hanged. They were arrested. A good number, as we were talking about last time, were sent to Australia.
Yeah,
but the sentiment lives on, we found. And what Merchant does in this book, and what I've given a lot of thought to, is although they were defeated, the idea of being more selective about technology is still with us. And if you looked up Luddite, if you Googled it, it would basically say they were a bunch of dummies, dum-dums. Google defines them, and most people define Luddites as they just don't want any technology at all. They just reject all technology. But that's not true. The original Luddites were against machines replacing their human livelihood. And some of those machines actually helped them. And they acknowledged that. You know, some of those weaving machines and machines that dealt with, they made hosiery and cloth, and some of those machines were useful to them, but replacing them wholesale, and sometimes the machines were very dangerous, has an interesting echo to today with what people are talking about: AI, self-driving cars, self-driving trucks, self-writing books, self-teaching courses. There are stories of students using AI to write their papers and teachers using AI to grade the papers. And there's really no human touch there.
Yeah.
So I don't want to give the super long first answer, but I do have a lot of things that I've been looking into about who are these Neo-Luddites and what are they doing?
Interesting. Well, I guess too, I think we were sold this idea, but we didn't really much of a say. It's coming from the top down that it's going to improve our lives. There's no consultation with the general public. I guess this is what this blowback is, essentially what this blowback gets rooted in is this notion that, hey, we don't want this.
Yeah, there are people, there's a group in Brooklyn of kind of, college age, younger people calling themselves the Neo-Luddites, and they gather in a park and they use flip phones or no phones, and they read books to each other and draw in sketchbooks. There have been a number of incidents here. We have a lot of self-driving cars being tested in California. The company is Waymo, owned by Google. And a group discovered that if you put a traffic cone, one of those orange traffic cones on the top, on the roof of the self-driving vehicle, it freezes up and it can't move. So there was a little bit of industrial sabotage that was rolled out in California in particular. In my son's school, for example, there's a new law passed in California which is going to ban cell phone use in schools. And when the kids come to school, they're going to have to put their phone in a pouch that closes magnetically, that you can't get your phone out. And then the pouch will be open magnetically at the end of the day when school's over. So we're seeing a lot of action taken of people who, not necessarily smashing machines, but people really questioning this top-down application of technology. Is it the best thing for us?
Yeah. You see, also too, building on that, I mean, Generation Z it's got run clubs. I mean, that's a whole blowback against, say, the world of online dating, and it's just fascinating. Because these young kids, they're grown up with technology. I was in the generation I had an analog childhood, then a digital adulthood, but that's the opposite, almost.
Yes.
Yeah.
One of the very obvious things is screen time. Most people are spending the bulk of their waking hours looking at a screen. And there might be something to that of people just feeling like they've had enough of that, aside from the issues of job replacement and these very serious economic issues. People want a more tactile, real-life experience, and they don't want to always be on a screen, even though I'd be the first to admit that screens, it's immensely valuable. I would never want to go back to writing on a typewriter.
Yeah.
I would never want to do research by traipsing around to one library or the next. I'd much rather go online and put the books on hold in the library that I need to go to and go to one library. And I'd much rather look things up online if I can find them, because it's much faster and, better.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the relationship just needs to be, well, I guess, balanced out a bit,
Yeah, because a key element is this top-down idea. There's here's another example, looking at my actual written notes. Recently here in California, the Writers Guild of America West and the Screen Actors Guild, their big argument in their contract negotiations centered around the use of AI, because the writers didn't want the studio executives to be rewriting their scripts with AI or changing their scripts with AI. And the screen actors didn't want their voices replaced by AI voices. There are people who do the motion capture. There's a lot of, that's when people dress up in those strange suits and it takes all these points of light on their body. And those are human beings doing that. They're jumping around being Shrek and being all these characters. They were concerned about being replaced. So there's a lot of ways that it's coming at us where the problem is not the technology itself, but the application from a position of power, the studio head, the publisher, the autonomous car company. And these companies really are taking away the ability of us we don't have the decision. We can't make the decision anymore. The autonomous cars have just appeared in my town in Santa Monica. They're all over. And when I go for a run and I see one of those things coming up behind me, it's pretty scary. Like, there's no one to report. If something happened, there's no one to talk to. There's no one to report to. It's just a autonomous car, running behind me as I run.
Yeah. It's getting more and more Black Mirror every day. It's just
kind of. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, well, actually, I know my little world of marketing, it's actually, we're seeing like more nonsensical, fantastical ads, because we know that if we use like a logical appeal, that's easily can be written by a machine. I think that's sort of way we need to think about is how we add that human touch, how we can make sure it's humanity that's, is producing all this work.
Yeah. I mean, and the other thing, which I think we've talked about before, but when you look at large language models, the way the AI has been trained, it's been trained on the back of human effort. All of that writing, that it's all the Google books that have been sucked in, particularly in illustration and drawing, when you do DALL-E, or when you do, when you just ask for a fanciful image of a chipmunk talking on Riverside or something, that's taken from human labor without payment, without credit. And that's pretty serious stuff. And most of even the more humanist AI types who are running these companies, they pretty much figure that's their right, that it's out on the web, it's out on the internet. Let's just grab all that stuff because it's just out there. But I, as someone who creates material and lives from income from that material, that's not a great thing for me to hear.
No.
Some are a bit more loose in their thinking of copyright, but in their conception of copyright. But I think, if I write a book, it takes a lot of trouble to write a book. I want that to be my book.
Yeah,
I don't want it to be sucked into a large language model.
We're going to take this step like in Denmark. I know in Denmark there's laws now that they're actually going to, people have a right to the copyright to their image. So are we going to see that be more prevalent?
Right. There are some interesting lawsuits going, even from a comedian, Sarah Silverman, because a lot of her routines are posted on YouTube, or people bootleg them from a club. And then when someone says, write me a funny joke, it could grab her joke, which is pretty scary. I was writing a talk that I'm going to give, and I asked ChatGPT for some ideas. So it gave me some ideas. And I looked at it and I said back to it, chatting back, these look very familiar. They really remind me of a book I read. And ChatGPT came back and said, oh, sorry. Yeah, I did take that from the book without acknowledgement. I'm sorry. And that would have been, not only is that bad from the start, but that would have been very bad had I been giving this talk and someone raised their hand and said, isn't that from such and such a book? So there are dangers using this unthinkingly, but I think the key thing that we have to hang on to is who has the power over it, who is deploying it, and who is really benefiting from it. I mean, it's one thing to have Calendly, or it's one thing to have Riverside take out all the pauses in this conversation or fix our bloopers. That's fine. I could see that's a wonderful application of AI.
Yeah.
But it's something else if I'm a cab driver, I drive a taxi, and suddenly my livelihood has disappeared. And human taxi drivers are perfectly good at doing what they do. They don't really need to be replaced.
No.
It just benefits a technologist. It benefits an elite.
I think that was an interesting point, and I have raised this on my show for another guest, is perhaps we should just band together and form data unions and basically it's building up from Luddites into trade unionism now, but, put the power back into people saying if you want to use our labours, you should actually compensate us.
Well, I think that's pretty much the only solution for someone like a writer, actor, motion capture person. Unionize and work with studios and work a labor management negotiation that includes something the Luddites couldn't do because they were hanged and killed and deported. That would work. There's a more insidious way that's happening with this is, here's an example. We all use spell check. And we all use grammar checks. We depend on them. You're either going to look it up in a book or you're going to use whatever you have in Microsoft Word or whatever you're using. But I've been asking all of those developers when I use one, specifically any third-party one, where does my text go? What happens to my text after you recycle it, reframe it? And luckily, most of the reputable ones say it stays on your machine. Nothing, it doesn't leave your machine. But a writer should know that if you ask an AI to reformulate your text, that's a black box. It's taking that text. It's working with that text. And the reputable ones say that they only keep it temporarily or it stays for 8 hours. But I'm not sure I trust all of these AI companies. I mean, if I put my whole novel into an AI checker and said, read this like an editor and correct all my mistakes, it would be a wonderful thing. But now I've given my whole corpus to some faceless machine and to people who would be thrilled to have a whole novel to train a large language model on. So I wonder about that. That's an awareness that we have to just think about. That it's not as easy as just, well, this is convenient, let's use it.
Yeah. I think it gives you a great idea to actually, if that's the case, then feed a crap and then see what happens.
Well, all of our transcripts, like all of these conversations in Riverside or anything we're using, it's being pulled into a model. Now, my opinion on that is, we're already making this public. We're speaking in public. It's like speaking in the public square, but it won't be with attribution. It'll just be part of an anonymized, tokenized blob of information. But maybe that's the compromise. And the uncompromisable thing is trade unions that will stop their livelihoods from being eroded. That seems to me like you can't do without that. Seems to me that has to happen.
Yeah, so moving away from AI, Lee, I think this is fascinating. I think the genie's out of the bottle. And last time we were chatting about climate change anxiety, where do you see that now? Because I think the world's getting, we just had the wettest winter in 60 years here, but we've had really crazy weather down here. We've had, say, over in New South Wales, massive floods, but on the other side of the state, they had once in a century drought. I mean, it's just crazy weather, and I think it's everywhere. I mean, are we still having a lot of climate change anxiety since the last time we spoke?
I would give a mixed answer. On the face of it, absolutely, yes. I have relatives who live in Spain. They just had 107 degree, 109 degree Fahrenheit temperatures there. We've had pretty crazy weather here in California, and we've had fires. There are fires. Where aren't there fires? I mean, there are fires even in New York and parts of Canada that usually aren't prone to smoke events. Oregon, Northern California, there's been smoke from fires. So definitely it's kind of a painting with a broad brush to say it's getting worse, but it's getting worse. The flip side of it is I think people are starting to see some solutions. In Germany, the movement for rooftop solar is very powerful. You can get the German government in some cities to subsidize partly or completely your rooftop solar panel so you can go off the grid. There are more solar panels being manufactured in China than ever before. And there's a wonderful book by Bill McKibben called Here Comes the Sun, which the short form of it is the sun is having a moment. After a few billion years, we're starting to realize what a wonderful thing the sun is, because we could power our homes, we could charge our cars, we could heat our water, and it's a wonderful free, not quite free, well, it's generated for free, but we have to adapt it. And there's a lot of that going on. The electric car in Europe and in China is on the rise. People are buying more EVs. Here in the States, it's a mixed bag because we have a administration regime which is against solar and against windmills and against EVs. They're basically funded by the fossil fuel companies, so that's who they're supporting. It's pretty unfortunate. And people, I don't think, quite understand or trust EVs yet. They're worried about what's called, you mentioned climate anxiety. They're worried about range anxiety. Can you drive that car hundreds of miles? Well, many of them you can. And unfortunately, Elon Musk gave it bad name with a few political extreme moments. He gave a bad name to he pretty much trashed the Tesla brand. So that is a problem.
Yeah.
But I would say it's a mixed answer with people, things are getting worse, but people are starting to find some solutions and understand what needs to be done, I think, particularly in Europe, in China, maybe not in the United States, but elsewhere.
Well, here in Western Australia, 45% of the houses now have got rooftop solar. That's it.
Right.
And it's going to get a point now, we're going to get to what's going to happen with the electrical grid once we get, say, 60, 70% of the houses. I mean, it's going to be too much electricity.
Right.
So then they have batteries and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I tend to agree. I think the tide is
I have
turning.
a friend. Yeah, I have a friend in San Diego who he's had rooftop solar for 10 years. He charges his car and he gives electricity back to the grid. He makes more than he needs.
Yeah. It's fascinating. Also, I don't want to circle back to the other topic too, but I've a little can of worms and this is mine, you can ask me anything about it, but people aren't really too that AI is actually doing a lot of damage to the environment.
This is an interesting question. Now, when it first showed up, the evidence that we all saw was pretty clear that it was using a lot of water and a lot of power and a lot more than a simple Google search. But then, to be honest, I've seen so many conflicting reports, some put out by the masters of AI themselves, that I don't know the answer. I've been told everything from, well, if you play a video game, you're using as much power as you would looking something up on a chatbot. So I wish I knew the answer.
Yeah. Okay.
There's no doubt that we're spending a lot of time on computers and using things that plug in. And if we all were writing in notebooks, it would probably be better. But the actual drain on the grid from AI, I know there's got to be more servers. There's got to be more server farms. They generate a lot of heat. There's a lot of water used to cool them. All of that there's probably kind of an electricity crash coming. If the rate of adoption continues at the rate that we're going, we're probably going to see some pretty serious electrical grid problems because we won't be able to get there fast enough.
Interesting. Now, Lee, I'm going to flip the mic onto you. Is there anything you'd like to ask me?
Well, yeah, I want to know, what is your view of technology, advancements, progress? When you think of progress, is it the technical and technological progress or human progress? And are they very different, technological progress and human progress?
That's a good question. I actually think ultimately, it should be human progress, but technology should just only be like a tool. So I think if we do it right, then it lifts. I mean, as you said, we don't want to go back, say, to the typewriter. We don't want to go back to the horse and cart. But if we do it right, and it did solve the public the right way, not top down, this is what you need sort of thing, but this is going to help. And I think it's better. I think we need to sort of have a lot more balance too. I don't. We can't just have one-way street like it's been. I think it needs to be, okay, yes, this technology is advancing and we're seeing a great amount, but what's the cost? What's it in for us? So, at the end of the day, we still got mortgages to pay, kids to feed. We can't, there's got to be some sort of balance. I mean, I'd like to go back to it, but that's what I'm thinking. Yeah.
I think do you think that people are willing to see a context to technology? And by that, I'll frame that a bit. I don't want anyone putting leeches on me to get rid of my infection. Yeah. I like the idea that I could go to a doctor and there's some modern medicine that helps me. But the context there is my health. Like, if you can help me, look, if you can give me a pill that takes away my headache, I'm in, that's okay. Yeah. But so much technology now is not like that. It's not even a double-edged sword. I don't know what it is. It's a multi-edged, multi-dimensional problem. So do you think people can frame technology in a way that actually allows them to evaluate it? Yeah. Or is it just overwhelming?
I think it's overwhelming, but I think you're right. I think the key word is context. And we've seen the rise of mRNA vaccines, for example. It's fascinating biotechnology, and it's been accelerated since 2020. I think that stuff's fascinating. That stuff, it's going to change it. Like, we're on the cusp of, say, quantum computing, and that's going to open up a whole new can of worms. And I think that's going to advance us so much. But I think we need to not say to put the guardrails in, but just need to say this is so the public the benefits, but not saying this is what you need. You said this is what's going to help, and we're going to be in advance. We're going to advance so quickly, but we got to be, basically got to do a better job than we are doing right now in selling to the public. This is me putting my marketing scholar hat on. I think it's all come down to a consumer issue.
Mm-hmm. And getting people to understand it, because I would say right now there's this kind of jackpot mentality, like AI, server farms, chips.
Yeah.
Everyone's going to make a lot of money. Well, not everyone's going to make a lot of money.
No.
Few people who are in the right position are going to make a lot of money. If you look back at earlier technologies like oil and electricity itself, the battle between Tesla and Westinghouse and Edison, these were titans battling for control of markets. But the everyday person, they didn't have much choice in that. And I think what's happening is maybe people are starting to see the value of choice in this.
Yeah.
Maybe. I hope.
And also I think too, this upheaval that comes, the other elephant in the room, we are at the dawn of another industrial revolution. So this always happens when we have this upheaval, a lot of technology comes out, jobs disappear, jobs get created. It's just like we're in a boat, but the sea's very choppy at the moment. But sometimes a choppy sea may lead to a calm bay. And I think that's what 10, 15 years' time, we probably won't having this conversation. We'll probably everything just be normalized. And we look back and say, wow, what a ride we were on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I sure do appreciate that the questions are coming up and people are asking the questions. It's so much better than the kind of survival mode of, unfortunately, there are many people who are you just have to be in the mode of, I got to go into the gig economy because that's the job I can get.
Yeah.
And you don't get to question. You don't have the luxury of questioning, like if I'm driving for Uber or driving for Lyft, or I have to take 3 jobs or 4 jobs. Is that good for me? You don't have that luxury, but at least the question is being asked now.
And also I think too, history has shown that as soon as so much power and money gets go to the hands of the few, that topples over. And so we just look back at early 20th century Russia or late 18th century France to know exactly what's coming up around the corner if we're not too careful.
Yeah, it's probably coming off with their heads.
Off their heads,
It's probably happening.
I mean, this show should just be about cautious optimism.
Let's try to stay with the cautious optimism.
Not condoning the guillotine, Anyhow, Lee, it's been a great catching up with you. But before we go, I believe you've got a few new books coming out. It's a good opportunity to plug them.
Wonderful. Well, I have in the fall, I'll leave it a little vague, but in the fall, I'm coming out with the 3rd book in a trilogy of Surrender is the first book, Resist is the second book, and Liberation, speaking of cautious optimism, the 3rd book is called Liberation, and the whole series is called the Utopia Engine trilogy. So it's really about, it starts quite dystopian, but all 3 books track us through a utopian vision. And I have the characters, one of the valuable things about science fiction is the characters get to we watch them work out our problems, maybe successfully, maybe unsuccessfully, but it's a test case for us. So I have Liberation coming out, a new novel, and then I'm going to reissue the 3 novels as a bundle, some of them signed, and I'll be doing some events and showing up at places and doing some talks. So that's very exciting. I'm looking forward to that. That's coming up pretty soon. From the time this is being recorded, probably within about a month and a half or 2.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah. Well, I'll make sure those are in the show notes. Give him a huge plug. And if you come across Lee's work, it's fantastic. Please support him. Lee, it's been an absolute pleasure having you back.
Well, thanks so much. It's always a pleasure. I like when you let me ask some questions of you. That's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, might as well. It's a 2-way conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this has been wonderful. Thanks so much.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for listening. The Friendly Futurist is a Podcast West production and has been produced and edited by me, Dave Munn. If you love this show, please leave us a 5-star review on your favourite platform. That way it can help me grow. Until next time, friends, remember to stay curious and the future is user-friendly.
Another Podcasts West production.
This podcast is just for educational purposes and it's not financial advice. I'm not a financial planner or advisor. Please do your homework and seek professional help before you take on any adventures.